Welcome to Money Mind. I'm Lynn with Justine Moss. Worldwide business travel spending is set to reach $1.4 trillion by 2020. And as companies seek globalization and expansion, business travel has become an inescapable part of the entire ecosystem.
And so business travel is becoming one of the largest expenses within companies. However, in the age of the internet, is long-haul business travel still common? How will technology shape the future of business travel? Well, with us to discuss this is Bertrand Saillet of the global corporate travel management company FCM Travel Solutions. And Bertrand is FCM Travel Solutions Managing Director for Asia. Welcome, Bertrand.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you both.
Now, business travel is increasingly becoming one of the largest expenses within a company's profit and loss sheet. What's the percentage that we're looking at? I mean, what proportion are we talking about? And does it differ per the size of the company?
Yes, it does. So the first thing I can tell you is that it's a big business. Like if you look at Asia Pacific only, we talk about more than 600 billion of US spent every year by companies across the region to make their people travel, which is huge. China alone represents 350 billion US every year. And of course, this is fast growing as well. It's an exciting industry to obviously be in because it's kind of the pulse of the global economy as well. And, you know, we've been talking about like the way the world was evolving, but the reality is like people need to travel because of globalization and the fact that it favors trade and communication. So the large companies easily spend a third of their travel and expense in airfares, for example. And it's pretty fair to say that most of the companies have travel as one of their top 5 expense in general across the world, which is obviously huge. Now, when it comes to your second question about the type of customers, it's fair to say that the Fortune 500 companies, like large MNCs, multinationals, have obviously a larger business travel budget because of the fact that their people need to travel all around the world. But SME business is growing fast as well because it's quite obvious that they need to find customers, but also suppliers to kind of deliver the service to their customers if they want to develop. So it's quite interesting to see the trend.
And as you say, you know, you got the airfares, of course, and a lot goes on to the airfares. But then you got all the land-based costs as well on top of that, you know, accommodation and dining and all of that are thrown in as well. So, I mean, there is a sizable amount of money that is being spent.
Yes, it's a huge amount. And you know what's the big problem is, Justine, is that companies have very little visibility on it because the reality is that some of those costs are very fragmented. It could be like a traveler. So yes, the airfare is booked with a travel agency, but when he gets on the ground, he's taking a taxi, expensing it with cash. Then depending on the expense system that they have in their company, they can track it or not. Some have still very manual processes. And more what we try to do as a travel management company is to help companies to be much more efficient at managing the overall travel cost and getting more visibility, but also much more efficiency at dealing with all the processes within companies that really kill productivity and efficiency again.
Why do you suppose business travel is still so essential in this day and age when we've got conference calls, we've got FaceTime? Is the face-to-face meeting still so important?
It's a very good question. And, you know, we do a lot of strategy meetings, like looking at the disruption that's coming in the industry, but also is there like any alternatives to travel? And the reality is that all those new systems and solutions have actually linked people even more, but they haven't replaced travel. And yes, people need to travel. And when you see the state of the world right now, you kind of think that the more people talk, exchange, and discuss matters actually make the world better. And the travel is kind of a similar situation. And if you want to deal with your customers and suppliers, if you want to negotiate and have deep understanding of each other and things which are possible or not, partnerships, travel is obviously mandatory. You need to see the people you interact with, that's for sure.
Yeah, and be in a room or however they conduct their meetings or whatever. It's about seeing the person and, as you say, interacting with them as well. It makes a big difference rather than just switching on a screen and seeing someone miles away. So, Bertrand, which regions have the most avid business travelers, would you say? You mentioned it's such a big industry, $600 billion worth, US dollars worth. Which regions are we looking at? Asia, Europe?
Yeah, so it all started in the USA, I would say. I mean, America was by far the largest business travel market for a very long time, and they have a huge domestic, obviously, volume, as you can imagine. I think it's 85% of the business travel in the US is actually domestic travel, which is obviously massive. Then Europe has grown massively over the past 30, 40 years, but now this is the time of Asia. And as I said, this is the largest business travel budget in the world now is happening in Asia. And if you look at the interaction between the different hubs in the region, clearly we cannot see that the trend will reverse. We are actually very optimistic about the trend of business travel in Asia. We actually believe that it will carry on growing by at least 3 to 5% per year over the years to come. And this is obviously very exciting, and it makes people more connected and again favors like business growth and all of that, which is very important, I guess.
So could you advise business travelers on some of the ways in which they can manage and even reduce their travel costs?
Yeah, and when we are at a time where companies are forced to kind of look at their spend and make sure that they optimize it and get people, spending probably a bit less and get more with it, it's probably a good time to start talking with company like ours, because what we bring to the table is really an opportunity to look at the travel budget overall and try to find ways to make them save money. It's actually quite interesting because I said before that for most of the companies, it's on the top 5 of the spend, right? So you would think, wow, I would look at this first and try to really do something about it. But most of the companies still, especially in Asia, still see it as a bit of, that's here, but I'm not quite sure what to do with it, and they don't look at it very strategically yet. So they don't look at real consolidation across the region to try to optimize the budget on the regional level. They don't really look at technology adoption and making sure that you can save from the moment you book. And they hardly look at reporting and way to really optimize what they actually purchase from vendors and try to get better deals with airlines, hotels, or different things, trying to enforce better policies. And I don't know, I think this is changing, and it's changing fast, but in terms of maturity, I still believe that the West, like US and Europe, are probably a bit more advanced than Asia, which was more traditional in the way we're interacting with travel agencies.
What about sort of things like, I guess you advise them on programs like frequent flyer programs, or things where they can save money, like for accommodation as well, and land-based costs. Do you also talk about the flight time in the sense of do all employees travel economy, or if it's over a certain time, do they then travel business class? Does it boil down to things like that? Definitely,
and it's a very important topic because what we call it is a travel policy, and what we are helping companies to do is to define a travel policy that suits their business needs, but also kind of give to the traveler some sort of confidence that the company is actually looking after them. So you mentioned preferred suppliers, you mentioned negotiation with vendors. All of this needs to happen with data, obviously, but one thing we take care of as well is the safety of the travelers. And, you just need to listen to the news for a little while to realize that things are happening around the world. And it's very important that as soon as they happen, you can rely on a supplier like ours that can basically deal directly with the traveler and make sure the traveler is safe. So if we take the example of Hong Kong, which happened on Monday, when they shut down the airport at 4 p.m., I think it was in the afternoon, we actually contacted all the travelers which had a flight scheduled after 4 p.m. on that day to kind of reallocate them to different airlines, although we didn't know much about, obviously, how things were going to evolve, but at least trying to be proactive in delivering a service to the traveler that makes him feel, oh, wow, now they take care of me. And as a company, I guess you have some sort of responsibility toward your traveler community, and it's very important that you actually take care of them. And duty of care is a very important part of what we deliver as well.
So are there any other benefits to using a managed travel business like the one that you represent?
Yeah, I would say technology is a big one. I mean, we spend more than 100 million a year in tech, which is obviously a big money. It's almost a third of our global profit. And the reason why we do this is because we believe that this is obviously the evolution of the travel experience. So we have developed this chatbot called Sam, I say who because it's almost like a personalized assistant. So we call it a mobile travel assistant who helps basically the traveler to go through all the hiccups of travel in a very smooth way. So we really assist the traveler all along the way. Clearly, the time where a travel agency was all about booking a flight, issuing a ticket, giving you an itinerary, off you go, good luck, is over. Now it's about helping you along the way. It's about telling you that when you get to this specific airport, this is where you get the check-in, this is where you get the lounge, this is the gate where you need to board your flight from, and if it changes, you get a notification about it like right away. And when you land, it tells you which carousel you can get your bag from, it tells you which land supplier is your preferred one as a company, so that again you track the cost, but also you make sure that your traveler is safe with a driver that is actually approved by the company, and all of those things are important. And when you get to your hotel, we tell you which restaurants are around you, and if you're a vegan, we tell you what are the vegan options. So this is kind of what I'm talking about. It's really assisting you along your trip. And
I love it.
Yeah.
I love my sort of travel.
You probably should be a customer of us.
We are speaking with Bertrand Saillet of the global corporate travel management company FCM Travel Solutions, and he's the FCM Travel Solutions MD for Asia. So you talked earlier about all that demand out there, Bertrand. Is the supply there? I mean, if you think about the countries that you operate in, is the supply there for people like us?
Definitely. I mean, we have a global network to start with. So in Asia, we are in more than 20 countries. So we can assist you almost everywhere across the region. And when it comes to travel, you look at it, like every countries across the region are developing infrastructures around travel. I mean, airports have improved massively across Asia. I mean, now we are in Asia, and I like to say that, but if you look at most of the airports in the region compared to what you see in the US, I mean, guess where is the first world? You know what I mean? It's like, and it's very interesting to see that every countries see travel as a big part of their economical growth and development. China is another interesting one. Look at the network of rail that they've developed over the past 20 years. This is, to me, mind-blowing. And this is just to make it's like the blood of the global economy just flowing. And this is why travel is such a fascinating industry, because it's really what connects people.
You mentioned the benefits of using a travel management company, but is this something that small and medium-sized enterprises can afford?
Definitely. I don't think we are talking about big costs here. We are talking about optimizing a budget, you know what I mean? And this is probably where we get the most challenges in terms of really make people understand that this is about optimizing a budget rather than looking at the fee you might pay for a service that you get delivered. And I think a lot of SMEs could benefit from using companies like ours to deliver a much better service to their travelers, but also optimize their budget and costs.
And just very, very quickly, Bertrand, before we leave you, you mentioned that technology that you've got to help people like us. What about businesses? How can they incorporate that technology to help their corporate travelers?
Yeah, so this is basically the ecosystem I was talking about. And, more and more what we are trying to do is to become like some sort of business outsourcing, process business outsourcing for companies so that we help them to optimize the entire flow from I book, I go on a trip, then I have expense and I need to reconcile it. And sometimes you have an army of accountants which are basically working with manual stuff and all that. What we are trying to do now is to come to companies and say, listen, let us help you to do it better from end to end and make sure that you don't spend your time on tasks that probably you shouldn't be even looking at.
And they can incorporate that technology.
Yes.
Thank you so much. We've been speaking with Bertrand Saillet of the global corporate travel management company FCM Travel Solutions.
My pleasure. Thank you.